Welcome to this episode of the weekly News Roundup. Russian President Vladimir Putin has replaced Sergei Shoigu as defense minister in a cabinet shakeup that comes as he begins his fifth term in office. In line with Russian law, the entire Russian cabinet resigned following Putin's glittering inauguration in the Kremlin, and most members have been widely expected to keep their jobs. Putin signed a decree appointing Shoigu as secretary of Russia's Security Council, the Kremlin said. The appointment was announced shortly after Putin proposed Andrei Belousov to become the country's defense minister in place of Shoigu. More than 2 years into the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has cost both sides heavy casualties, Putin proposed Andrei Belousov, a 65-year-old former deputy prime minister who specializes in economics, to replace his long-term ally Sergei Shoigu as defense minister of Russia. The shakeup, which caught the Russian elite off guard, indicates Putin is doubling down on the Ukraine war and wants to harness more of Russia's economy for the war after the West sought but failed so far to sink the economy with sanctions. We bring you this report.
65-year-old Andrei Belousov held leading positions in the finances and economic department of the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of Economic Development. In 2013, he was appointed an advisor to Putin, and 7 years later, in January 2020, he became first deputy prime minister. Shoigu was appointed to the Security Council instead of Nikolai Patrushev, the council's current head. In recent months, there had been rumors that Mr. Shoigu's position was growing weaker and that he could lose his job. In latest news coming in, President Vladimir Putin has appointed the long-serving Russian Security Council chairman Nikolai Patrushev as the presidential aide. The Kremlin announced an apparent demotion amid the recent government reshuffle. Shoigu will also become the deputy in Russia's Military-Industrial Commission, Peskov said, as Putin embarks on a fifth term as president. The timing of Shoigu's exit is notable, coming off the back of several significant advances by Russian troops in eastern Ukraine. Patrushev was dismissed after serving 16 years as head of Russia's Security Council, an executive branch body that advises the president on strategic and security issues. Long considered a key member on Putin's inner circle, Patrushev was replaced by former defense minister Sergei Shoigu, another close ally of the Russian president. Shoigu has been widely seen as a key figure in Putin's decision to send Russian troops into Ukraine. Russia had expected the operation to quickly overwhelm Ukraine's much smaller and less equipped army and for Ukrainians to broadly welcome Russian troops. Instead, the conflict galvanized Ukraine to mount an intense defense, dealing the Russian army humiliating blows, including the retreat from an attempt to take the capital, Kyiv, and a counteroffensive that drove Moscow's forces out of the Kharkiv region. Kremlin spokesman Peskov said the change made sense because Russia was approaching a situation like the Soviet Union in the mid-1980s, when the military and law enforcement authorities accounted for 7.4% of gross domestic product. That, said Peskov, meant it was vital to ensure such spending aligned with and was better integrated into the country's overall economy, which was why Putin now wanted a civilian economist in the defense ministry job. Belousov, a former economic minister known to be very close to Putin, shares the Russian leader's vision of rebuilding a strong state and has also worked with Putin's top technocrats who want greater innovation and are open to new ideas. Belousov has played an important role in overseeing Russia's drone program. Putin's move, though unexpected, preserves balance at the top of the complex system of personal loyalties that make up the current political system. The shakeup gives Shoigu a job that is technically regarded as senior to his defense ministry role, ensuring continuity and saving Shoigu's face. The shakeup comes after Putin was sworn into a fifth term in office, cementing his more than two-decade rule as Russia continues waging war with neighboring Ukraine.
From Russia, we move to Iran. And in latest news coming in, India and Iran signed a 10-year agreement for India to manage the Chabahar port, enhancing regional connectivity and providing an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. The US warned of potential sanctions for dealing with Tehran, but stated it would let India address its foreign policy objectives. The deal strengthens bilateral relations and facilitates trade with Afghanistan and Central Asia, with plans to integrate the port into the international north-south transport corridor. India has been developing the port in Chabahar on Iran's southeastern coast along the Gulf of Oman as a way to transport goods to Iran, Afghanistan and Central Asian countries, bypassing the port of Karachi and Gwadar in its rival Pakistan. The long-term agreement was signed between Indian Ports Global Limited (IPGL) and Ports and Maritime Organization (PMO) of Iran, enabling operation of the Shahid Beheshti terminal. US State Department Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel, asked about the deal, told reporters that US sanctions on Iran remain in place and warned that Washington will continue to enforce them. We bring you this report.
In August 2023, Mr. Modi met Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi in Johannesburg on the sidelines of the BRICS summit, during which they discussed the pending long-term contract on Chabahar port. Chabahar is a deepwater port located in the Sistan Baluchistan province of Iran. During the visit of Mr. Modi to Iran in May 2016, a trilateral agreement to establish the International Transport and Transit Corridor Chabahar Agreement was signed by India, Iran and Afghanistan. India is participating in the development of the first phase of Shahid Beheshti terminal of the Chabahar port. India has so far supplied 6 mobile harbour cranes, 2 with a lifting capacity of 140 tons each and 4 with a capacity of 100 tons each, and other equipment worth $25 million. The long-term deal was signed between Indian Ports Global Limited (IPGL) and the Ports and Maritime Organization of Iran, authorities in both countries said. Under the agreement, IPGL will invest about $120 million, while there will be an additional $250 million in financing, bringing the contract's value to $370 million, said Iranian Minister of Roads and Urban Development Mehrdad Bazarbash. IPGL first took over operations of the port at the end of 2018 and has since handled container traffic of more than 90,000 TEUs and bulk and general cargo of more than 8.4 million tons, an Indian government's official said. A total of 2.5 million tons of wheat and 2,000 tons of pulses have been shipped from India to Afghanistan through Chabahar ports, the official added. Terming transit and ports as the main pillars of Iran-India relations, Mr. Elahi said, "We believe that the signing of this contract will create a new and serious energy in all sectors of relations and will restart stalled projects. So with this contract and its implementation, cooperation will be developed in all sectors. Chabahar can act as the driver of relations." The Iranian envoy also rejected any conflict between India-Iran cooperation on Chabahar and any economic plans and obligations of Iran towards other countries. The agreement between Iran and India for the development of the Chabahar port was signed years before China's One Belt One Road project and is based on the common interest of the two countries, he added. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said it will clear the pathway for bigger investments to be made in the port, acknowledging that the port was being run on an ad hoc basis, not because of any problem on the Indian side, but over who the combination of partners would be in Iran. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that when the long-term agreement would be concluded, it would clear the pathway for bigger investments to be made in the port. Terming it a historic day for the maritime sector, Mr. Sonowal said that the agreement heralded a new age of trade, marine cooperation and transshipment while boosting trilateral trade between India, Iran and Afghanistan. In the absence of the long-term agreement that got delayed due to some tricky issues, including arbitration, the two countries had concluded short-term leases. Arbitration was one of the most important disputes between the negotiators of the two countries. India took over operations of the ports at the end of 2018. The ports opened a transit route for Indian goods and products to Afghanistan and Central Asia, avoiding the land route through Pakistan. Meanwhile, the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has responded to the US-sanctioned warning over the Chabahar port deal by saying, "I think it's a question of communicating, convincing and getting people to understand that this is actually for everyone's benefit. I don't think people should take a narrow view of it." He also pointed out that the US itself had appreciated the larger relevance of Chabahar in the past. Mr. Jaishankar further said that India had a long association with the project but was not able to sign a long-term pact, which was important. He added that New Delhi was able to sort out the issues and sign the long-term agreement, which will benefit the entire region.
In Nicaragua, the Sandinista regime maintains a campaign of repression against the Catholic Church and some evangelical churches that have raised opposition to the regime's abuses, according to various national and international reports and complaints. The National Police of Nicaragua arrested 12 members of the Puerto de la Montaña Church, an American evangelical mission, accusing them of the crime of money laundering. According to the police, since the mission arrived in Nicaragua in 2013, it served as a front for the illicit enrichment of its leadership. Following the request of the Organization Defending Freedoms, the ADF International, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, the IACHR, issued precautionary measures to demand that the dictatorship of Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo in Nicaragua respect the human rights of 11 Christian leaders imprisoned in March of this year. On April 25th, the IACHR reported on its website that it granted precautionary measures in favor of Walner Omier Blandon Ochoa and 10 other people from the Puerto de la Montaña Evangelical Church after considering that they are in a serious and urgent situation of risk of irreparable damage to their rights in Nicaragua. The 11 people are imprisoned in La Modelo prison and in the Comprehensive Women's Penitentiary Establishment in inadequate conditions and without receiving the necessary medical care, indicates the IACHR. We bring you this report.
The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, IACHR, extended precautionary measures for the benefit of 11 people linked to the Evangelical Church, Ministerio Puerta de la Montaña, after considering that they are in a serious and urgent situation of risk of irreparable damage to their lives in Nicaragua. In the case of Mrs. Maricela de Fatima Meya Rui, she gave birth prior to her arrest and was not receiving postnatal care or adequate nutrition. For its part, the state did not provide information that would allow it to be determined that the identified risk factors have been duly mitigated, the IACHR denounces. The precautionary measures require the Nicaraguan dictatorship to protect the rights to life, personal integrity and health of those imprisoned, in addition to ensuring them adequate medical care and treatment, as well as access to their families and lawyers, in addition to evaluating alternatives other than the deprivation of liberty. They also demand that the regime report on the actions taken in order to investigate the alleged events that gave rise to the adoption of this resolution and thus avoid their repetition. The ADF meanwhile has expressed their thanks to the IACHR for the measures in favor of Christian leaders. The dictatorship of Daniel Ortega and Rosario Murillo in Nicaragua sentenced 11 Christian leaders to between 12 and 15 years in prison and to pay $880 million. They were also prevented from having contact with their families and lawyers. All this after the success of his organization in bringing together thousands of people praying in public spaces, something that would have been seen as a threat by the Sandinista regime. The 11 sentenced, who must each pay $18 million, are a married couple, an evangelist and 8 pastors linked to the group founded in Texas, United States, and which has been working in Nicaragua since 2015 with the permission of the Nicaraguan regime. In continuation of the religious repression in Nicaragua, Catholic Bishop Rolando Alvarez, currently exiled in the Vatican, obtained a new award for his fight for religious freedom in Nicaragua. The 2024 Freedom Prize from the International Republic Institute, IRI. Bishop Rolando Alvarez, Bishop of Matagalpa and Apostolic Administrator of Estay, is a well-known defender of human rights and critic of the dictatorship of Daniel Ortega and his wife, Vice President Rosario Murillo. The Nicaraguan prelate was forced to remain confined inside his episcopal house since the beginning of August 2022, along with some priests, seminarians, and a layman. 2 weeks later, when they were almost out of food supplies, the police broke into the house and kidnapped Monsignor Alvarez to Managua, the country's capital, where he was under house arrest. In the midst of being questioned, the dictatorship sentenced him on February 10, 2023 to 26 years and 4 months in prison, accusing him of being a traitor to the country. Since then, he was held in the prison known as La Modelo, where political prisoners of the dictatorship are sent. One day before being sentenced, Bishop Alvarez had refused to get on a plane in which Ortega and Murillo deported more than 200 political prisoners to the United States. He was finally deported to Rome after Vatican mediation on January 14, 2024.
As we have seen, the Christians and the Catholic Church in particular in Nicaragua undergoing the extremely repressive regime of Daniel Ortega and his Sandinista government, we move now to the Gaza war front, where Israel has sent tanks into eastern Jabalia in the northern Gaza Strip on Sunday after a night of heavy aerial and ground bombardments, killing 19 people and wounding dozens of others, Palestinian health officials have said. The death toll in Israel's military operation in Gaza has now passed at least 35,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza's health ministry. The bombardment has laid waste to coastal enclave and caused a deep humanitarian crisis. Israel says over 620 soldiers have been killed in the fighting, more than half of them during the initial Hamas assault. Jabalia is the biggest of Gaza's 8 historic refugee camps and is home to more than 100,000 people. We bring you this report.
Israeli forces thrust deep into Jabalia camp, deeper than the first time when they invaded northern Gaza with tanks close to the local market, residents said. They also reported the fiercest gun battles in months there. The army sent tanks back into Zaytun as well as Al-Zabra, where residents also reported heavy bombardments that destroyed several houses, including high-rise residential buildings. The army had claimed to have gained control of most of these areas months ago. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Sunday warned that Israel was risking facing an insurgency in Gaza without a post-war plan for the enclave. The Israeli Defense Forces said air sirens had sounded in the southern Kerem Shalom area and it had successfully intercepted 2 rockets launched from the vicinity of Rafah. It said there were no injuries and no damage reported. Hamas Al-Aqsa TV said on its Telegram account the rockets were launched from Jabalia despite the active army raid. The armed wings of Hamas and the Islamic Jihad said their fighters attacked Israeli forces in several areas inside Gaza with anti-tank rockets and mortar bombs, including in Rafah, previously the Palestinians' last refuge, where more than 1 million people were sheltering. An Israeli airstrike on a house in Sabra, a suburb of Gaza City, killed Talal Abu Tarifa, a political official of the Palestinian Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine (DFLP), Hamas media said, and the group said. The DFLP is the third major faction of the Palestinian Liberation Organization (PLO), the Palestinians' highest decision-making body. This week, more families estimated in the thousands were leaving Rafah as the Israeli military pressure intensified. Tank shells landed across the city as the army gave new evacuation orders, covering some neighborhoods in the center of the city which borders Egypt. Israeli military said on Sunday it had opened a new crossing in northern Gaza called Western Erez to transfer humanitarian aid to the strait.
Thanks for watching. Until we meet next time, stay blessed.